The wraiths of Galtzha were infamous across the galaxy. Known as the most ruthless and formidable pirate crew, their reputation preceded them wherever they went. Led by a cunning yet arrogant Zorvian named Kragath, the wraiths had laid waste to fleets, plundered uncountable treasure, and left a trail of devastation through countless star systems. Their modus operandi was simple: overwhelm, demand surrender, and loot. Few dared to challenge them, and even fewer lived to tell the tale. Around the long table of the Wraith's flagship, Black Dread, Kragath's lieutenants recounted tales of their latest conquests. But tonight, the discussion took a curious turn. The humans, muttered Slovak, a scarred and grizzled Grawl, his mandibles clicking nervously. They're not like the others. The room fell quiet. Mentioning humans always brought tension among the crew. Kragath, lounging in his seat, waved a clawed hand dismissively. Bah! They're nothing but stubborn pests. We've conquered far greater foes. It's not their strength, Slovak continued, his voice low. It's their defiance. Other species, they surrender, they beg, they offer compensation. Humans? They'll fight to their last breath, even if it's hopeless. And if they fall, they make sure to drag their enemy down with them. A murmur of agreement spread among the lieutenants. Stories of human tenacity had reached even the farthest corners of the galaxy. Engineers defending stations with makeshift weapons, civilians coordinating guerrilla resistance, soldiers refusing to retreat even when outnumbered. Humans didn't just fight, they made every encounter a grueling, bloody ordeal. Kragath's crimson eyes narrowed. Enough of this cowardice. You think a pack of hairless apes can best the wraiths of Galtzha? It's not cowardice, Captain, Slovak replied, his tone cautious. It's respect. They're unpredictable. Even their non-combatants are dangerous. Kragath sneered. I've heard enough. Prepare the fleet. Our next target is a human supply convoy. Let's see if these apes live up to the legends. The human supply convoy was a seemingly perfect target, at least to Kragath and his crew. It consisted of civilian freighters escorted by a mere handful of lightly armed corvettes, far from a match for the Wraith's overwhelming force. The Shattered Veil Nebula, a swirling expanse of dense gas clouds and electromagnetic interference, provided the perfect cover for an ambush. Kragath envisioned an easy raid, with rich rewards and minimal resistance. On board the Black Dread, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation as Kragath outlined his strategy. These humans think they're clever, he growled, tapping the holographic map of the convoy's position. But they're as blind as whelps in this nebula. They won't even see us coming. The Wraith fleet crept through the swirling gas clouds, their ship's cloaking systems blending seamlessly into the nebula. As the Black Dread and its escorting vessels closed in on the convoy, the pirates prepared to strike. When the human ships detected the Wraiths, alarms blared across the freighters and escort vessels. The corvettes immediately sprang into action, moving to intercept the incoming threat. Streams of communication traffic lit up between the convoy's vessels, but there was no panic in their voices, only a calm, measured urgency. Open fire! Kragath bellowed, leaning forward in his command chair. The first volley of plasma and ion bolts erupted from the pirate ships, targeting the lead corvettes. The escorts responded with coordinated precision, weaving through the nebula and returning fire in calculated bursts. Their movements were unnervingly sharp for what Kragath expected to be a ragtag defense force. Despite the corvette's valiant efforts, they were no match for the Wraith's superior firepower. One corvette took a direct hit to its engines, spiraling out of formation before exploding in a blinding flash. Another suffered heavy damage, its shields flickering under the relentless barrage. But as the pirates pressed their advantage, something peculiar began to unfold. The freighters, rather than fleeing or scattering in terror as Kragath had expected, maneuvered with uncanny precision. They adjusted their positions in unison, forming a tight cluster that seemed to bait the Wraith fleet into closing the distance. Kragath's second-in-command, Slovak, frowned as he observed the tactical readouts. Captain, the freighters, they're not behaving like civilians. They're holding position. Idiots, Kragath sneered, his mandibles clicking in amusement. Their courage will be their undoing. They think they can outlast us? Board them. I want their cargo intact. The Wraith fleet advanced, launching boarding pods that streaked through the nebula like predatory missiles. The pods latched onto the freighters' hulls, and squads of pirates surged into the civilian vessels, expecting a routine pillage. They were sorely mistaken. Inside the freighters, the pirates encountered chaos, but not the panicked disarray they anticipated. The humans aboard had transformed their ships into fortresses. Engineers, medics, and dock workers, people who should have been helpless, met the pirates with a ferocity that defied logic. They wielded improvised weapons with deadly ingenuity, plasma torches became flamethrowers, maintenance drones were repurposed into combat units, and cargo loaders doubled as battering rams. In the freighter Horizon's Resolve, a pirate squad found themselves pinned down in a narrow corridor. Makeshift barricades blocked their advance, and EMP traps fried their equipment. A sudden burst from a jury-rigged railgun tore through the group, sending them scrambling for cover. "It's a damn death trap," one pirate yelled, clutching a wounded limb. On the ship's bridge, Chief Engineer Elena Vasquez barked orders to her crew. "Reroute power to Deck 4 shielding and seal the bulkheads. Overload the plasma conduits when I give the signal." "But Chief, that'll take out half the deck," a junior technician protested. "Better half a deck than losing the whole ship," Vasquez snapped. "Do it now." A deafening explosion rocked the Horizon's Resolve, ripping through a pirate boarding team and leaving nothing but charred remnants in its wake. Similar scenes played out across the convoy as the humans fought back with resourcefulness and grit. Every corridor, every maintenance hatch became a battlefield. From the Black Dread, Kragath watched the unfolding resistance with mounting frustration. His officers reported mounting casualties and dwindling progress. "Captain, the humans, they're using their freighters like warships," one officer stammered. "Impossible." Kragath spat. "They're just engineers and cargo haulers. Push harder." But the pirates had underestimated their prey. For the humans, surrender was never an option. Each freighter crew seemed determined to hold out until their last breath, using every ounce of their ingenuity to turn the tide against their invaders. And then, the reinforcements arrived. The Wraith's boarding party stormed the freighters with the ruthless precision of experienced raiders. Their expectations were simple: terror-stricken civilians cowering behind weak security forces, easily subdued and herded into submission. Over the years, this strategy had rarely failed them. Yet, as the first squads breached the airlocks of the human convoy's lead freighter, Horizon's Resolve, their overconfidence began to crumble. Instead of the anticipated chaos of frightened civilians and unarmed workers, the pirates encountered a battlefield. The interior of the ship had been transformed into a labyrinth of improvised defenses. Maintenance drones floated ominously through the hallways, their appendages bristling with salvaged weaponry and makeshift shields. Welded barricades blocked critical access points, while narrow corridors were riddled with booby traps. Ambient lighting flickered erratically, casting long, eerie shadows that made it difficult to distinguish threats from the ship's machinery. From behind the barricades, a cacophony of human voices rang out, not screams of fear, but shouted orders and determined battle cries. Engineers, dock workers, and even medical personnel stood ready, armed with whatever they could muster. Some wielded industrial tools, welding torches, hydraulic presses, and pneumatic rivet guns, turned into weapons of last resort. Others had fashioned crude but effective railguns from spare parts, firing bolts of steel with lethal force. The corridors became a war zone where raw ingenuity and unrelenting ferocity ruled. As the pirates advanced, they quickly realized the humans weren't simply defending, they were hunting. On Deck 3, a squad of Grawl pirates cautiously approached a fortified junction, their plasma rifles raised. Without warning, the maintenance drones hovering nearby surged forward, their surfaces crackling with electricity. The lead pirate shouted an alarm, but it was too late. The drones unleashed a wave of EMP pulses that disabled the pirates' weapons and armor systems, leaving them vulnerable to a hail of projectile fire. A homemade railgun mounted on the ceiling unleashed a volley, its projectiles piercing armor with pinpoint precision. In the dim corridors of the Horizon's Resolve, one pirate squad found themselves pinned down near a cargo bay. They had underestimated the humans' cunning. A group of engineers, led by a stocky man wielding a plasma cutter, had lured them into a bottleneck. The humans exploited every advantage of their environment, using the ship's layout to funnel the pirates into narrow passages where they became easy targets. Drones hovered behind the engineers, acting as mobile shields to deflect incoming fire. From a hidden alcove, an improvised railgun fired with a deafening crack, its bolt tearing through the armor of the squad leader. "It's a death trap," one pirate yelled, clutching his side as he slumped behind cover. The remaining pirates exchanged nervous glances, their confidence eroding with every moment. Another bolt fired, striking a fuel line and igniting a small explosion that forced them to retreat further down the corridor. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Horizon's Resolve, Chief Engineer Elena Vasquez orchestrated the ship's resistance with unshakable resolve. Sweat glistened on her brow as she studied the live feeds from the ship's internal cameras. Her team had cobbled together a network of surveillance systems, allowing her to monitor the battle in real time. Despite the chaotic situation, her voice remained steady as she issued commands. "Seal off deck 4. Elena barked, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Overload the plasma conduits on my mark." "Chief, that'll destroy half the deck," a junior engineer protested, his face pale with anxiety. "Better half the deck than the whole ship," Elena snapped, her piercing gaze locking onto the junior engineer. "Do it. Now." The engineer hesitated for only a moment before nodding and typing commands into his console. Seconds later, the deck beneath the pirates erupted in a blinding explosion. Plasma conduits overloaded with a deafening roar, consuming the boarding party in an inferno of superheated energy. The freighter shuddered from the force of the blast, but the barricades held. On the remaining decks, the sounds of cheering echoed as the defenders realized the tide was turning. Elena allowed herself a brief sigh of relief before refocusing. "Redirect power to the forward shields," she ordered. "And patch me through to the other freighters. I want status updates." Across the convoy, similar scenes played out. On the freighter Steel Vanguard, dockworkers used crane arms to hurl heavy cargo containers at boarding teams. The pirates' cries of shock were drowned out by the crash of metal on metal as entire squads were crushed beneath the improvised projectiles. In the medbay of the enduring flame, medical personnel turned surgical lasers into deadly defensive weapons. They worked in tandem, their precise strikes targeting the weak points in the pirates' armor. On the Horizon's Resolve, the battle reached a fever pitch as the pirates grew desperate. Despite their advanced weaponry and numbers, they were ill-prepared for the humans' unorthodox tactics. Every step forward was met with devastating resistance. Some pirates tried to regroup and counterattack, but the humans adapted quickly, using the ship's systems to stay one step ahead. Near the engineering deck, Elena's team launched another daring maneuver. Using their knowledge of the ship's design, they vented coolant into the corridors, creating a freezing mist that slowed the pirates' advance. Visibility dropped to near zero as the pirates struggled to navigate the icy labyrinth. Hidden behind a sealed bulkhead, Elena's team activated a series of remote-controlled drones equipped with high-powered industrial lasers. The pirates barely had time to react before the drone struck, cutting through their ranks with surgical precision. As the tide of battle turned decisively in favor of the humans, the surviving pirates began to retreat, their morale shattered. On the bridge, Elena watched their withdrawal on the surveillance feeds, her expression grim but determined. "We're not out of this yet," she muttered, turning to her team. "Prepare for reinforcements. This isn't over." Unbeknownst to the humans, the Wraith's fleet outside was already beginning to falter. The unrelenting resistance within the freighters had bought the convoy precious time, and their distress signals had reached Allied forces. As the first signatures of human military reinforcements appeared on the long-range scanners, a renewed sense of hope spread among the defenders. Back on the bridge, Elena stood tall, her gaze fixed on the carnage unfolding across her ship. She knew the battle wasn't over, but for the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. Against all odds, the humans had held their ground, proving once again that they were a species to be reckoned with. As the battle raged aboard the freighters, salvation arrived in the form of the human military. The ISS Resolute, a massive dreadnought, tore into real space with a blinding flash, its imposing silhouette casting a shadow over the chaotic battlefield. Accompanying it was a fleet of destroyers and frigates, their sleek forms bristling with weapons ready to unleash hell. The human reinforcements wasted no time, immediately locking onto the pirate ships and opening fire with precision and devastating fury. "Captain, human reinforcements inbound," a pirate officer stammered, his voice thick with panic as the Resolute's railguns roared to life, sending hyperdense projectiles hurtling through space. Kragath, the pirate warlord, stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Black Dread, his crimson eyes narrowing in frustration. "We outnumber them," he barked, slamming a clawed fist onto his console. "Hold your ground. Crush them." But holding their ground against the humans was easier said than done. Unlike any other species the Wraiths had encountered, humans fought with a relentless tenacity that bordered on terrifying. Their tactics were both brutal and elegant, combining long-range missile barrages with daring close-quarters boarding actions. The pirates found themselves under siege on every front, their once imposing fleet systematically dismantled. The Resolute led the charge, its broadside cannons unleashing volleys of kinetic projectiles that tore through pirate shields like paper. At the same time, swarms of fighter craft darted through the chaos, engaging the Wraith's interceptors in fierce dogfights. Each human vessel operated with flawless coordination, executing maneuvers with deadly precision. Kragath growled in frustration as he watched his fleet falter under the humans' onslaught. "Focus fire on the Resolute," he commanded, his voice a snarl. "Bring it down before it tears us apart." But the Resolute was a fortress, its shields absorbing the concentrated fire while its point defense systems obliterated incoming torpedoes. Meanwhile, human boarding pods launched from their frigates, piercing the pirate ships' hulls like spears. What followed was pure carnage. On the decks of the Black Dread, the human soldiers were unlike anything the pirates had ever faced. Clad in sleek, angular combat armor that shimmered with active camouflage, they moved with an eerie, calculated efficiency. Their weapons, a combination of plasma rifles and brutal close combat blades, tore through Wraith defenses with devastating ease. Each soldier operated with surgical precision, taking down targets with single, well-placed shots or lightning-fast melee strikes. In one corridor, a squad of Wraiths attempted to regroup, setting up an ambush. They didn't even see the humans coming. A single soldier dropped from a vent above, his boots hitting the deck with a metallic thud. Before the pirates could react, he unleashed a storm of plasma bolts, each shot striking true. The few who survived the initial assault were dispatched with brutal hand-to-hand combat techniques, the soldier's blade cutting through armor like it was nothing. On the Black Dread's bridge, Kragath watched the feed in stunned silence. The screen showed the human soldier standing amidst the carnage, his dark armor spattered with glowing Wraith blood. The soldier's head turned toward the camera, his expression hidden behind an emotionless visor. Then, with chilling calm, he raised his rifle and shot the camera. "They're monsters," one of Kragath's lieutenants whispered, his voice trembling. His clawed hands shook as he stared at the blank screen, unable to look away. Kragath clenched his fists, his claws digging into his palms. "They're soldiers," he spat, though the quaver in his voice betrayed his growing unease. "Fight them, damn you!" But the pirates' resolve was crumbling. Ship by ship, their fleet was falling apart under the relentless human assault. The destroyers targeted key vessels, tearing through their defenses with coordinated strikes, while the Resolute loomed ever closer, a harbinger of doom. On board their ships, the human boarding teams left no survivors, moving from deck to deck with unstoppable momentum. Kragath's remaining officers began to plead for retreat, but the warlord refused to back down. "We are Wraiths. We do not flee," he roared. Yet even he could not deny the reality unfolding around him. His fleet was in shambles, his men terrified, and the humans were advancing inexorably toward his own bridge. As the Resolute's railguns fired another salvo, punching through the Black Dread's hull, Kragath finally understood what he was up against. The humans weren't just skilled warriors or clever tacticians, they were a force of nature, driven by an indomitable will. and they would not stop until every pirate was wiped out. The Wraith's fleet was in disarray, their ships crippled or destroyed by the relentless human assault. On the Black Dread's bridge, Kragatha's blood-red eyes scanned the carnage with growing desperation. His forces were crumbling, their morale shattered. "Order a retreat," he growled, his voice barely concealing his fury. "We'll regroup at Charon's Rest." The remaining pirate ships activated their engines, retreating toward the asteroid field of Charon's Rest, a labyrinthine stronghold hidden within the dense debris of the field. But the humans weren't content to let them escape. Aboard the ISS Resolute, Captain Darius Kane watched as the Wraiths fled. "Track their trajectory," he ordered. "We're taking this fight to their doorstep." The human fleet wasted no time. Pursuing the fleeing pirates, they trailed them to Charon's Rest, a natural fortress among jagged asteroids. The Wraiths scrambled to fortify their base, setting up defensive turrets and mines, their desperation evident. "They're coming here?" Slovak, one of Kragatha's lieutenants, asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Kragatha's lip curled in a snarl. "Let them come. We'll make our stand here. I'll show these humans what it means to face the Wraiths in their den." The pirates prepared for a last stand, barricading their strongholds' corridors and rigging traps in every possible bottleneck. But the humans didn't charge in recklessly. From the perimeter of the asteroid field, the Resolute and its fleet opened fire, bombarding the field with kinetic projectiles. The resulting destruction forced the pirates to retreat deeper into the base, ceding ground before the humans even set foot inside. When the bombardment ceased, the human strike teams moved in. Drop pods pierced the asteroid's surface like spearpoints, delivering squads of heavily armed soldiers into the heart of the enemy's stronghold. Inside the base, the battle was fierce and unrelenting. The Wraiths, cornered and desperate, fought savagely, using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. But the humans were relentless. They adapted to every trick and ambush the pirates devised, turning the Wraiths' own traps against them. The corridors echoed with the clash of battle, plasma bolts ricocheting off walls, explosions reverberating through the rock, and the guttural cries of pirates falling to precise, calculated human strikes. The Wraith's tactics, chaotic and ruthless, were no match for the discipline and coordination of the human soldiers. At the base's core, Elena Vasquez, now a key member of the rescue and assault teams aboard the Horizon's Resolve, led a squad toward the central command chamber. Moving with purpose, they hacked into the Wraith systems, disabling automated defenses and sealing off escape routes. "Central defenses are down," one of her engineers reported, sweat dripping from his brow as he worked the console. Elena nodded. "Good. No one's getting out of here." The squad advanced, neutralizing pockets of resistance as they pushed deeper. Finally, they reached the command chamber. Kragath stood at its center, flanked by his most loyal lieutenants. The pirate warlord's plasma blade hummed menacingly as he glared at the humans with unbridled hatred. "You're finished, Kragath," Elena said coldly, her sigh-down trained on him. The warlord roared in defiance, his massive frame surging forward. His blade sliced through the air, aiming for the humans. But he was too slow. Elena's soldiers moved as one, a blur of precision and skill. They dispatched his lieutenants in moments, their disciplined strikes leaving no room for error. Kragath lunged at Elena, his blade swinging in a desperate arc. She sidestepped, her movements calculated and fluid. Before he could recover, a single shot from her sidearm struck true, piercing his chest. The warlord staggered, his blade clattering to the floor. He slumped to his knees, the fight draining from him. Elena stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "This is for everyone you've terrorized." With a final gasp, Kragath fell, his reign of terror ending in silence. As the dust settled, the human soldiers secured the base, ensuring no pirate escaped. The asteroid field of Charon's Rest, once a haven for criminals, now stood as a testament to humanity's resolve and their refusal to bow to fear. The battle was over. The Wraiths of Galtzhar, once the most feared pirate crew in the galaxy, were no more. The human fleet secured the area, recovering the stolen supplies and rescuing the freighter crews. News of the victory spread quickly, cementing humanity's reputation as a force to be reckoned with. On the bridge of the ISS Resolute, Admiral Marcus Kane addressed the fleet. "Let this be a message to all who dare threaten humanity. We will fight. We will endure. And we will prevail." For the survivors of the convoy, the battle was a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. And for the galaxy, it was a stark reminder: never underestimate humanity. They were not just survivors, they were